watching my kids deteriorate significantly, watching their mental health decline was heartbreaking. And it's lit a fire in my belly. I can't let it lie. That's why I set up the Facebook group and the website, and that's why I'm committed to doing this work. I think joyful, playful learning is the way forward. There is some incredible work being done, and we need to champion that and showcase it and inspire others to do the same.
Hi, welcome to Creative Minds Shaping the Future. I'm your host, Emma Palastanga. I'm an educator, author, and now podcast producer, curious to discuss a range of views on creativity and curriculum. Jo Symes runs a social enterprise, Progressive Education, which is raising awareness of alternatives to conventional schooling. She's passionate about education which gives young people appropriate skills for the 21st century and puts children's rights, social justice and well-being at the core. The progressiveeducation.org website includes initiatives to improve the learner experience at school, changemaker campaigns, articles and research. In collaboration with Limitless, she also runs a membership for people wanting to set up their own schools and learning communities. Jo has ambitions for progressive education to be an impactful social enterprise to support and excel the movement for change. In this episode, we explore whether or not Jo feels creativity has a place in a 21st century curriculum. Jo, welcome.
Hi.
Let's start with, how do you define creativity?
I think creativity is the ability to come up with new ideas and how to solve problems, but also how to create something, like whether that's like art or dancing or even gardening.
Mm-hmm. So you've kind of covered it in lots of ways there, and I agree it's not one simple definition, which is why I always ask guests on the podcast to define it for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think it's just art, drawing, painting, but it's so much more than that, isn't it? It's about having a creative mindset.
Absolutely. I think that's at the core of everything, whether there is an output or whether it is just in your head and it never realizes itself as a physical object or something others can see. But yeah, absolutely. The mindset is at the core of it all. I mentioned in the introduction that you're passionate about giving children skills for the 21st century. Can you expand on what these skills are and why you feel that they're needed?
Yeah, so I think it's the skill. Often people refer to them as the 4 C's. So creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, and what's the last one? Communication skills. There we go. And I think they've expanded it to 7 C's now, but those are the 4 ones that people talk about. And I think they're really important because it's not just about grades. The grades don't really tell you about the whole person. And people are saying that these 4 C's, or the softer skills, or rather the essential skills, are going to be more important
Yes.
as we go into the future.
I love the way you flipped that. The softer skills is something I've mentioned before, and I think you're absolutely right. We need to scrap that word and call them the
Yeah.
essential skills because
Yes.
they really are essential.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we need for life. It's how to build relationships, isn't it? And I think schools sometimes miss that. And it's all about filling heads up with knowledge, but actually how we interact with others is probably the key.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's an argument to say that, knowledge is out there. If we know how to find knowledge, we don't always need to know how to retain that knowledge these days. I think there is an argument for knowledge as well, because, for example, you're using AI, it comes up with something fantastic, but how can you be certain that it's accurate? So, teaching children the skills of cross-referencing, checking other sources, and also referring to that knowledge in your head. Does this sound right? Does it feel right? Even images that we see now that are generated by I have to question as an adult, is that real? Could that really have happened? Or is that somebody messing about with AI creating this fictitious situation? And I do feel sorry for both younger people who haven't had the life experience I've had and older people who haven't had the experience of AI that people in my generation have had. I think we absolutely need those skills, and knowledge is part of it. but isn't the be all and end all.
Yeah, it's not everything, is it? It's just part of the jigsaw.
What's your most memorable lesson and why do you think it's stuck in your mind?
I think for me, the most memorable lessons are those where it was kind of practical learning, hands-on learning, learning through doing.
Mm.
So whether that was like going on a field trip, I remember I did A-level textiles and we all went off to the V&A Museum in London and we went off to the clothes show in Birmingham and like those really stand out for me. And we were lucky enough in our geography course to go off and look at glaciers in Switzerland. That was amazing. And yeah, we did quite a few trips at school. And at university, I did psychology. And what stands out there was like when we actually did the experiments, so like interviewing people and yeah, doing various tests. That's where the deeper learning, I think, came from when it was practical. It's when there were positive relationships between the teachers and the young people. I think you're going to be more engaged, you're going to want to do well, you're going to be more enthusiastic if you're in a room where you feel comfortable and confident and at ease rather than if it's a teacher where they're not so bothered about having that good rapport or they make it a bit scary.
100%. I think so many of my previous guests would agree with that. And one that really sticks out is Gavin McCormack. And, you know, we all remember our favourite teacher. And as an adult, we can stand back and think, well, why were they our favourites? It was because they cared and because they understood, and probably because they made learning fun. And I link that back to what you were saying about the practical learning, the experiential learning.
Yes.
I think that's fascinating that you went and looked at the glaciers and saw them for yourselves. How much impact did that have on each one of you to see them there, not just see a picture or watch a video, but to actually physically see them? And I know that particular field trip isn't available to everybody.
I don't know how we were able to do it. It wasn't a fancy school. Like, yeah, I don't know. I was lucky, so lucky.
But I think just learning through experiences, even in the early years, a mud kitchen, actually getting your hands dirty. Forest school, again, is another example. And if you're learning science, is another one that I'm passionate about. And too often, many teachers are a bit, oh, we don't really want to get all the equipment out, and or we haven't got enough equipment for every group to work on it. So the teacher stands at the front, demonstrates an experiment, and everybody writes it up. I mean, how dull.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
for some children, they need that physical manipulation. Um, I'm all for manipulatives in maths as well, for children who struggle with learning, but also those who find maths easy, but you're introducing a new or maybe challenging concept. Why can't they have the place value equipment to manipulate and move around? Why can't they use Numicon, for example, whatever it is? I do feel that those tools are so useful for everybody. So, yes, I'm a massive fan of experiential learning, even if it doesn't involve incredible trips to see glaciers.
yes. Yeah, it doesn't have to be fancy. Like, for example, one of my sons is home educated and he's very reluctant when it comes to formal learning, particularly with maths and English. And this morning he's got this new like online tutor who teaches maths through Roblox, the video game. So
Oh,
that it went really, really well. I'm so pleased. Like he needs to learn in a more creative way.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
it definitely
absolutely.
can be done. I think joyful, playful learning is the way forward.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Um, and also, I have a guest, episode 4. Dr. Poppy Gibson talks about learning maths through Minecraft. So, in your son's case, it was Roblox.
Oh, cool. Yeah, similar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And why can't we and why shouldn't we tap into the things that those children are passionate about and help them to integrate the learning so they barely realize they're learning actually?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I think we should be doing is making much more room for young people's interests and passions and finding their strengths rather than focusing on what they're not so good at and just doing more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we need to fill those gaps. We need to plug those gaps for those children if they're struggling with something. But why can't we do it in a fun and engaging and exciting way? I remember teaching year 6 children and revising for their SATs tests. And I used to say to them, right, we're going to make a game here. Again, I think it was maths, but we did the same in most subjects. So let's make a maths game where take an area of maths that you find challenging. Don't go for the easy option. Find an area of maths that you find challenging. Your task is to create a game. Now, that could be whatever you liked. I remember somebody using split pins and crocodile clips, making a little circuit, and they had to connect up the question to the answer for the multiplication tables. Somebody else made a board game, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, one of our lessons was let's get those games out and let's all play each other's games and evaluate them. And what I was really doing was getting them to revise. But it was a fun way because they were
Yeah,
learning from their
I
peers
didn't realize.
and having fun playing those games.
Yeah, you've just reminded me actually something else that stands out from school. I can't remember if it was history or RE, but our task was to make a game. And I remember making sort of like a snakes and ladders type board, but it was 3D. So I had little boxes under each square, and you had to like go like forwards up the ladders ahead in time and down the snakes to go back in time. And I can't remember what I had in the boxes, but I spent ages over this thing. And I probably would have found it really boring if that hadn't have been the homework. But yeah, that definitely worked for me. And it really inspired because I did a year, like a gap year before I went to uni. And I worked in an orphanage in Hungary as an English teacher. And I recreated that game for them. And it like consolidated everything I taught them, like from the weather to greetings, all different things, different foods, and put it all in a big game. And it was so difficult teaching these kids, like really traumatic backgrounds. They weren't really interested in learning English at all, and probably will never need to learn English. So, but the game aspect was where they really got engaged. So that just shows it works.
Yeah, how powerful. And it's powerful beyond your own childhood experience as well. You've carried that with you throughout
Yeah.
your life and then replicated it with other learners.
Yeah. Yeah.
What can your website, Progressive Education, offer to listeners?
Okay, so I set up the website in 2020, and this was off the back of quite a challenging time where my children hadn't really got on very well at mainstream school, and we had to deregister and home educate for a period of time. And I wanted to share with other people the resources basically that I wish I'd had at that time. So the first thing was I wanted to create a directory of what I call progressive schools and learning communities. So full-time schools, but also part-time learning communities for home educated young people. And progressive, I'm using that word to mean kind of forward thinking to challenge the status quo. So places that do prioritize the life skills like creativity and social justice, equity, inclusion, and mental health and well-being. So yeah, that started out as a UK directory, but it's now international. So I'm trying to get the word out that settings from overseas can join. Then was the realization that, not everyone is able to take their kids out of mainstream school. So we need to have campaigns to bring about change. So there's also a campaigns section, which people can get involved with to bring about change, and also a support for schools section, which is it lists lots of different initiatives that teachers and school leaders can get involved with to try to improve the learner experience, whether that's initiatives to improve mental health or offering flexi schooling, projects in democracy and collaborative decision making, opportunities to boost agency and autonomy and self-directed learning, critical thinking, design thinking, making learning more fun, lots of different things like that. I've got resources for people that want to set up their own schools and learning communities. And there's a news section and a link to conferences and events.
And ultimately, it's a resource to improve the quality of education and improve the learner experience.
Yes, and also to raise awareness of different ways of doing education. So there's a section for various things from Montessori to Forest School, Reggio Emilia, democratic education, online schooling, hybrid learning, small schools, as many alternatives as I could think of for
Yeah.
people that want something different and to inspire change within mainstream, because that's where most kids are.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful, and it sounds like we could all tap into that resource. And please, international listeners, do get in touch because you could be on that platform yourselves.
Yes, absolutely. So it's progressiveeducation.org.
Okay, and listeners can contact you through that website to list their organisation. Is that correct?
Yes, they can. There's a button on the menu that says directory, and there's a link under there that says add a listing, and people can add a listing for a school or a learning community and a job or an event.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, let's hope we see that platform grow. In fact, let's hope we see education change and become really
Yes.
exciting and inspiring because I know that there are so many people already doing wonderful things. I wouldn't have this podcast if that wasn't the case. I've had so many incredible educators come on here, and I use that term broadly. It's not just qualified teachers, it's everybody that's got a place in education. I have been really privileged to speak to some amazing people, and I know that there are more incredible guests to come in the future. So, yeah, I know that there are loads of people doing great things, but let's help to inspire those people who maybe have got a bit stuck in a rut. As Pi Corbett said, there are schools doing brilliant things, but you need to get out there and have a look. If you can't physically get out there and have a look because you haven't got the time or the finances, let this podcast be that portal into this new world of joy
Yes,
and
absolutely.
exploration.
There's a group called the Progressive Education Group on Facebook, which is a collect. There's like 11,000 people on there now, educators, parents, activists, psychologists, researchers, change makers. So if people have got initiatives to share, then they're very welcome to join and share on there and connect with others.
How are you creative at work or at home?
I'd like to be more creative. I think at home, the only thing I really do outside of work and looking after my children is I'm taking up Tai Chi,
Wow.
which is sort of creative. It's sort of like a slow dance.
Yeah.
And at work, I guess I really enjoy the creative element of like creating the graphics for what I do and also organizing events and connecting people. I've loved building my website and watching that grow. And also outside of that, I home educate one of my sons, and that really calls for creativity. So he didn't get on well at school. He absolutely hates all the formal learning and being told what to do all the time. He needs to have maximum autonomy to be able to learn through his interests and passions, and that no amount of force is going to get him to learn any other way. So I have to try and find creative ways to weave the learning in. So, like I mentioned before, he's learning maths through Roblox. He's connected with others through VR. He's got this virtual reality headset, and that's opened a lot of doors. He's met people on there, and then we've gone on to do like paddle boarding and rock climbing and stuff through the people and connections he's made through that. Last year, he was part of a really great little home ed learning community, and we did really cool things like they built a tree house, which obviously brought the maths into there. And they made like an outdoor clay oven, which they actually used for cooking. They made cinnamon buns in there and pancakes and stuff. So yeah, I've had to be quite creative to find ways for him to learn.
That sounds really exciting, though. Really wonderful. And he's
Yeah.
enjoying learning that way, presumably.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's in a very different place to where he was 2 years ago when he was at school, really unhappy. And that was, yeah, really sad and well, traumatizing really to watch his mental health and well-being nosedive. But yeah, he's bounced back and he's full of beans now.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear, but also worrying to understand how much of an impact the
Yes.
way we teach children has on their mental health and
Yeah.
well-being.
Like watching my kids like deteriorate significantly, watching their mental health decline was heartbreaking. And it's lit a fire in my belly. I can't let it lie. That's why I set up the Facebook group and the website, and that's why I'm committed to doing this work, because I just still can't. It's a coping strategy. It really hurt me to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I don't want listeners to think that all mainstream schools are teaching the same way, because that certainly isn't true. And if we go back to episode 1, for example, listen to the likes of Tina Farr and Claire Wiles, there is so much joy in their learning. Listen to Kavita Tanner and what she's done in her work. Wincy Bamford Flores and Rocket Productions. There are so many incredible organizations out there, as we said, that can be
Yes.
hosted on your website and we know are doing brilliant things.
Exactly. And they need to be celebrated. And I don't want this to be about, being negative about schools. Teachers are doing amazing things. They're committed to changing children's lives. I've got a friend who's a head teacher. She has done the most incredible things. And I'm pretty sure if my kids had gone to her school, like I wouldn't have got into this world at all. They would have been fine. Like she built like a roundhouse. All the kids built that themselves in the playground. She set up a forest school on site. They built their own cars and entered a competition to race their cars. And the head teacher, my friend, was going around in this tiny little car that the kids had made. Like amazing creativity. There is some incredible work being done, and we need to champion that and showcase it and inspire others to do the same.
Absolutely. That was so well said. It needs brave leaders, doesn't it, to inspire
Yes.
others. That's kind of where it begins. It's the change makers, the policy makers, the leaders. I don't think it's the people on the chalk face that aren't creative. I feel that their
No,
creativity is somewhat stifled. And I know Sir Ken
definitely.
Robinson talked about schools stifling children's creativity, but I do think it's above that level where
Yeah.
teachers' creativity can either be unleashed, as the title of episode 1, or curtailed and squashed. So I think we need to look really broadly and at higher levels as to how we can embrace that.
Yes, definitely. I think there are so many teachers that want to do great creative things, but they can't. They've got the pressure of the SATs, so there's all the teaching to the test, and the pressure of Ofsted, and so yeah, it's not always possible. But we need to shine a light on these beacons of hope and show how it can be done.
Absolutely. And I want to challenge that thought because I feel that lots of people feel SATs and Ofsted are, and the national curriculum are three negatives, if you like. But actually, these schools and organisations doing these brilliant things also are subject to Ofsted
Yes,
inspections. They also put their children in for the SATs tests. And there is a lot of evidence to show actually that cramming for tests is not the way forward. You don't get the results. It's the perceived pressure that's narrowed the curriculum. And in my book, I talk very much about that, that actually we don't need to see it as the pressure that it is and the limitation that it is. We can be more open. And as a previous Ofsted inspector myself, I know that Ofsted don't look for one specific way of learning. In fact, that was very much drilled into us. Don't have a preferred style because it's the outcomes that matter. And if I say that again, it's the outcomes that matter. So teachers and leaders listen to that message really clearly. However you achieve the outcomes is fine, but it's the outcomes that really matter. Let's try not to feel those pressures forcing us down one narrow route. And let's open that up to think about, well, how can we achieve the same results in a fun, engaging, exciting way? And that will stick in children's brains much better. They will have a much happier lifestyle and well-being. And they will just ultimately then learn much better than if we sit them down in a classroom and cram.
too right. That's very inspiring.
I hope other educators are inspired and I hope that they listen to not just my message, but the message of all of my guests, because there is so much out there and there's so many different ways to do things that you don't have to replicate one person's way. Cherry pick. That's certainly what I did when I developed the curriculum in my school. I went and visited other schools. I did lots of literature research and I cherry picked what worked for us. And that's my other passion. It has to work for your children in your setting, whatever that setting looks like, whether you've got one, two, three children, or 500 children, or 1,000 children, make it work for the children in your setting and be creative, be imaginative.
Yes, that's it. One size doesn't fit all, and you've got to do it your way and adapt to the children that you've got in your setting.
100%. Yeah, that was so well said. What is next for you?
Coming up in the next couple of months, I've got a celebration of a 1 year anniversary of my membership community. So this is a membership for people that want to set up their own schools and learning communities that I run with Alex O'Neill from Limitless.
Mhm.
So that's the first thing. And then I'm launching a new course. So that's going to be a downloadable online course, like a video series of different approaches to education, from Montessori to Forest School, Reggio Emilia, democratic education, online schooling for parents and carers who maybe don't know whether they want to send their kids to mainstream school, or maybe their young people don't suit the mainstream system, or also for educators who may be disillusioned with the system and want to try something different. And hopefully, eventually, also policymakers to understand that a different way is possible and to inspire change in the system.
So that's coming out again
Around April time.
next month. Wow, brilliant.
Yes.
Not long for people to wait. Who else would you like to hear on creative minds shaping the future and why?
It's very difficult to pick just one person, but on the top of my head, I'm going to say Kate Robinson, who is the daughter of Sir Ken Robinson, who has the, as you I'm sure know, the
Yes.
most watched TED Talk of all time. Do schools kill creativity? And Kate is basically committed to seeing out his legacy and is about to launch a new pedagogy, the Robinson pedagogy, which is very exciting. So I'm sure she'd be delighted to talk to you about that.
Well, Kate, I'd love to talk to you. So many guests really hold your dad and also you in such high regard. Creativity and Ken Robinson are synonymous, really, aren't they? So,
Yeah.
yeah, we'd love to have you on the show. Thank you so much for your time today, Joe. It's been a really, really interesting conversation that we've had, talking about experiential learning, how powerful that is, how children's mindset and mental well-being is what is so important with learning, and that mustn't get lost in the whole picture of trying to raise standards. There are so many different ways to raise standards and so many different ways to educate the child, as you have proven. And your video course, your upcoming video course, will also show educators and those who want to try a different way. Your website is not just a directory of rich resources, but it's a poignant place for change, I would say. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing so many insights.
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Jo's perspective and could sense her desire to make a difference. This episode concludes Series 1. I think it's clear that creativity not only has a place in education, but is an essential skill for the 21st century and beyond. In Series 2, starting next month, we explore creative expression and why it is important for us all. Without the creative skills of Chloe Clayton, I wouldn't have the theme music for this podcast. Here is Gloria Garbujo, an arts therapist, with a teaser for episode 1.
The arts have helped me navigate loss and grief at different times in my life. I realized creativity wasn't just for performance, but actually could be transformative because it was a way to connect with others and to make sense of things. I really hope we can inspire professionals to bring more creativity into their lives.
If you're following this podcast from the start, I hope you've enjoyed listening to Series 1. If you're a new listener, welcome and thank you for joining us. In Series 1, we asked, does creativity have a place in education? In Series 2, we explore creative expression and why it is important for us all. In this series, I speak to painters, sculptors, musicians and dancers, to name a few creative disciplines. I already have more fantastic guests lined up for Series 3 and 4, where I'll be talking with inspiring individuals with a range of experience. If this sounds like you, maybe you have a view on creative thinking or creative expression, please get in touch by following me at ACPC4A, the number 4, on X, or Emma Palastanga on LinkedIn to connect. There are many ways you can support the show for free, and it's much appreciated. Share with your contacts, rate the show, or leave a review. If you like, you can buy me a virtual coffee to help with the costs of the podcast platform. Please follow this podcast so that you can stay up to date on the release of each episode. Thanks so much, and I'll see you on the next episode of Creative Minds Shaping the Future.